Deep within the frozen, unforgiving vacuum of the cosmos, at a distance so incomprehensibly vast that human numbers begin to lose their meaning, something colossal is stirring in the dark. We are talking about a region of space located more than 12 billion light-years away from the chair you are sitting in right now. At that extreme distance, we are not looking at the universe as it exists today, but rather peering directly through a cosmic time machine, staring at a chaotic epoch that unfolded when the universe was only a fraction of its current age. In that ancient, violent era, the smooth, orderly cosmic structures we take for granted today simply did not exist. Instead, the fabric of space-time was an absolute battlefield of gravity, density, and radiation. And right at the center of this primordial battlefield, astrophysicists have officially confirmed the existence of a monster that completely shatters our fundamental understanding of how the universe builds reality. It is an entity so violently aggressive, so utterly unyielding in its hunger, that it actively consumes the mass of an entire sun every single day. To truly wrap your mind around that concept, you have to look past the sterile numbers found in scientific journals and visualize what is actually happening in the deep dark. A single sun is a celestial titan, a star 1 million times larger than the entire planet Earth, anchoring an entire solar system with its immense gravitational pull, holding billions of tons of superheated plasma in a delicate nuclear balance. Yet, to this cosmic anomaly, a star of that magnitude is nothing more than a passing snack. Every 24 hours, an entire solar anchor is pulled out of its orbit, violently destabilized, torn into trillions of burning fragments, and dragged down into an absolute gravity trap from which not even light can escape. This is no longer a slow, predictable process of stellar evolution. This is a continuous macrocosmic execution happening at a scale and velocity that standard theoretical physics says should be completely impossible. The existence of this object means that our beautifully constructed textbooks, our advanced computer simulations, and our most cherished cosmological theories are missing a massive, terrifying piece of the puzzle. For more than 40 long years, humanity was completely blind to the fact that this monster was even out there, despite looking directly at it. This is perhaps one of the most unsettling aspects of the entire discovery. The light from this ancient titan didn't suddenly appear overnight. It had been hitting the mirrors and sensors of our global observatories for generations. As early as 1980, during the Schmidt Southern Sky Survey, photographic plates captured the distinct, blazing signature of this exact object. It was catalogued by automated satellite networks, archived in global astronomical databases, and mapped by sophisticated computer algorithms designed to sort the night sky into neat, logical categories. But the computer models fell victim to a catastrophic optical illusion. Because this object burned with such an extreme, blinding brilliance, the automated sorting systems looked at the sheer volume of photons hitting the sensors and came to a deeply flawed conclusion. The algorithms assumed that nothing that bright could possibly be far away. They reasoned that if an object was radiating that many photons, it had to be a relatively close, ordinary star residing comfortably within our own Milky Way galaxy. It was a cosmic blind spot that lasted for over 4 decades. The illusion finally shattered when a team of dedicated astronomers at the Australian National University decided to manually re-examine these anomalous, hyper-bright stellar signatures. They utilized one of the most powerful optical instruments ever constructed by human hands: the Very Large Telescope, hidden deep within the desolate, high-altitude landscape of the Atacama Desert in Chile. When the VLT's advanced spectrographs took hold of the incoming light and began splitting it apart into its component wavelengths, the scientists in the control room watched in utter disbelief as the data materialized on their monitors. The light did not display the chemical fingerprint of a nearby domestic star. Instead, the spectral lines were pushed violently toward the red end of the spectrum, indicating an unprecedented level of cosmic redshift. The photons hitting the mountaintop sensors in Chile had not traveled from a nearby galactic neighbor. They had been racing across the expanding, stretching fabric of space-time for 12 billion years, leaving their source when the universe was just a brutal, newborn cradle. What the telescopes had actually captured was the roaring, screaming heart of a primitive, infant galaxy, driven by a supermassive black hole designated by science as J0529-4351. The sheer energy radiating from this point in space is enough to induce a sense of profound vertigo. It is officially classified as the brightest, most luminous quasar ever recorded in human history, shining with a radiant energy that is an astonishing 500 trillion times more powerful than our own sun. If you were to take every single star in the Milky Way galaxy, all 100 billion of them, and pool their collective starlight together, then multiply that blinding output by 20,000, you still would not match the furious, chaotic energy emanating from this single, localized point in the ancient cosmos. It is a tempest of pure radiation so intense that it illuminates the deep space surrounding it, casting a literal spotlight on an era of cosmic history that was supposed to be shrouded in primordial mist. But the blinding light of this quasar is merely the byproduct of a far more terrifying underlying reality. The true horror lies in the sheer material scale of the gravitational engine hiding behind the glare. J0529-4351 is not a typical supermassive black hole. It holds the mass of roughly 17 billion suns. To translate that scale into terms that a human mind can visualize, we must step past the invisible threshold of the event horizon and analyze the anatomy of its accretion disk. This is the orbital slaughterhouse of the cosmos, a massive, swirling ring of gas, dust, and disrupted star systems trapped in the ultimate gravitational vice. Because of the immense mass of the central singularity, the matter inside this disk cannot simply fall straight down into the void. Instead, it gets locked into a hypervelocity orbital spin, creating a flat, spinning vortex of plasma that represents the most violent environment in known existence. The matter trapped in the inner regions of this disk is moving at near-relativistic speeds, screaming around the dark perimeter at tens of thousands of kilometers every single second. At these ungodly velocities, individual atoms are smashed into one another with such staggering kinetic violence that the gas strips away its own electrons, ionizing completely into a friction-cooked soup of superheated plasma. The temperatures generated within this orbital hurricane exceed millions of degrees Celsius, turning the matter into a glowing, radiating meat grinder that dissolves the structural integrity of anything that drifts too close. And the physical dimensions of this blazing inferno are completely unprecedented. The accretion disk of J0529-4351 stretches across an impossible diameter of 7 light-years. Let us pause for a moment and really contextualize what a 7 light-year structure means for our place in the universe. If we were to magically transport this monster into our own cosmic neighborhood and drop it precisely where our sun sits today, the scale of the destruction would defy the imagination of any science fiction writer. The actual event horizon, the physical boundary of no return, where gravity becomes so absolute that even light is pulled backward, would instantly swallow Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars whole. The outer regions of our solar system, the cold, distant realm of Pluto, the Kuiper Belt, and the mysterious Oort cloud, would not even register as a minor distraction on the inner edge of the disk. The blazing, superheated plasma storm would continue expanding outward, reaching far past our nearest stellar neighbors, swallowing Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri, and every single star system, planet and asteroid within a 7-light-year radius. Our entire solar system, everything we have ever known, every mountain range, every ocean, every historical empire, and every human thought would be reduced to nothing more than a microscopic, completely unnoticeable atom, dissolving inside a roaring, interstellar hurricane of fire. Entire star systems that drift into the gravitational field of this giant are not simply pulled inward like pebbles dropped into a well. The tidal forces generated by the 17 billion solar mass core are so brutally uneven that they perform an act of total structural destruction long before the stars even touch the event horizon. The gravity pulling on the near side of an entering star is exponentially stronger than the gravity pulling on the far side. This immense differential literally stretches the star like taffy, pulling it open in a process physicists call spaghettification. The gas is violently stripped away, peeled off layer by layer, and funneled directly into the rotating accretion disk to feed the central furnace. It is a relentless cosmic grinder that turns organized matter back into raw, chaotic radiation. Yet, as terrifying as the sheer size and destructive capability of J0529-4351 may be, it is not the aspect that keeps theoretical cosmologists awake at night. The true crisis that this object presents to modern science is the absolute speed at which it grows, a characteristic that actively violates the established laws of physics. According to everything we currently understand about the mechanics of deep space, there is a strict, universal speed limit that dictates how fast a black hole can legally consume matter. This barrier is known to science as the Eddington limit, and it represents a beautiful, self-regulating balance of natural forces between gravity and light. The physics behind the Eddington limit are elegant in their simplicity. As a black hole pulls more gas and dust into its accretion disk, the extreme friction causes that disk to glow with increasing intensity. This light is not passive. It is composed of photons that carry physical momentum, and as these photons radiate outward into space, they exert an outward force known as radiation pressure. Therefore, you have two opposing forces locked in a cosmic tug-of-war. Gravity is trying to pull matter inward toward the center, while the intense radiation pressure generated by the burning disk is pushing matter outward, away from the center. If a black hole tries to eat too much matter at once, the disk becomes so blindingly bright that the outward push of the light becomes stronger than the inward pull of gravity. The intense radiation literally acts like a cosmic leaf blower, blasting the incoming fuel supply away into the empty void of deep space. Because of this built-in mechanism, a black hole is supposed to have an automatic brake pedal. It naturally chokes on its own brilliance, forcing it to feed at a controlled, predictable pace over billions of years. But J0529-4351 is completely ignoring the rules of the cosmos. It is operating at the absolute razor's edge of this physical boundary, exhibiting a phenomenon that astronomers refer to with deep concern as super-Eddington accretion. It is consuming surrounding matter at such a frantic, hyper-accelerated rate that it is somehow overriding the immense radiation pressure that should be pushing its food away. It is an unstoppable cosmic predator stuck in a permanent, unyielding feeding frenzy. defying the natural safety valves of the universe. This creates a massive, catastrophic paradox for our timeline of creation. J0529-4351 existed when the universe was in its absolute youth. If you take the standard step-by-step evolutionary models mandated by the Eddington limit, there simply has not been enough time between the moment of the Big Bang and the era we are observing for a black hole to grow to 17 billion solar masses by eating at a normal pace. To reach this size so incredibly early, the object had to have skipped the traditional steps of stellar evolution entirely. It implies that the infant universe was capable of funneling raw matter into localized points at a density level and velocity that our most advanced supercomputer simulations cannot replicate. Either our mathematical formulas for how matter condensed after the birth of space-time are fundamentally broken, or there is a completely hidden chapter in the physics of gravity, an exotic, undiscovered mechanism that allows primordial anomalies to bypass the laws of light and feast on the universe without restriction. As we pull our gaze away from the blinding, localized fury of J0529-4351, we begin to realize that the monsters of the early universe are only one symptom of a much grander, far more unsettling structural crisis. If a 17 billion solar mass void can break our timeline of creation from the inside out, the wider macrocosmos is hiding an anomaly so immense that it threatens to dissolve the very scaffolding of space and time. For generations, the entire foundation of modern astrophysics relied on a singular, comforting assumption known to science as the cosmological principle. This pillar of physics dictates that, on a truly grand scale, the universe is homogeneous and isotropic. It is the cosmic equivalent of looking at a perfectly smooth, evenly distributed fabric, where, no matter which direction you point a telescope, the density of matter, galaxies, and stars should remain roughly identical. Gravity is supposed to pull evenly from all sides, and the expansion of space-time should stretch with a uniform, predictable grace. But when modern observational astronomy began mapping the macrostructural layout of our own local cosmic neighborhood, this smooth illusion vanished into thin air. In its place, scientists collided with a labyrinth of cosmic deserts, gargantuan cavities of absolute nothingness that defy the rules of standard galactic clustering. And the most disturbing realization of all is that our own home galaxy, the Milky Way, is currently trapped near the absolute dead center of the largest cosmic void ever identified by human intelligence. This immense cosmic desert, officially designated by astrophysicists as the KBC void, stretches across an expanse of space that completely paralyzes the human imagination. We are talking about a gargantuan, hollow sphere measuring roughly 2 billion light-years in diameter. To understand the sheer absurdity of this structure, you have to realize that 2 billion light-years encompasses millions of cubic megaparsecs of space, a volume so vast that it contains entire superclusters of galaxies on its distant horizons. Yet, inside this specific bubble, the density of matter drops to a catastrophic low. Detailed infrared surveys conducted by astronomers Ryan Keenan, Amy Barger, and Lennox Cowie revealed that the concentration of galaxies, stars, and dark matter inside this region is between 30 to 50% lower than the average density of the wider universe outside its borders. Under the standard model of cosmology, known to science as the lambda cold dark matter model, a void of this magnitude is mathematically prohibited from existing in a universe of our current age. Gravity simply has not had enough time since the moment of the Big Bang to clear out a 2 billion light-year expanse of matter, pushing it away into dense, outer walls. The timeline of cosmic structure formation is completely broken by the sheer emptiness staring back at us from the local dark. Living inside a 2 billion light-year void is not merely a passive geographical fact about our position in space. It actively warps how our local universe experiences the fundamental laws of motion and gravity. Because the KBC void is an area of profound underdensity, it completely lacks the gravitational mass required to hold onto the structures trapped within its interior. Think of it as a titanic cosmic tug-of-war where the center of the rope has completely snapped, and the opposing teams on the outside are pulling with unchecked, brutal force. The dense walls of matter that form the outer boundary of our void, massive, hyper-clustered networks of galaxies and dark matter filaments, exert an overwhelming gravitational pull on everything caught inside the bubble. Because there is not enough local mass in our neighborhood to pull back, the entire local universe is currently experiencing a violent, outward evacuation. Galaxies inside our void are not just drifting through space. They are racing toward the outer edges at anomalous velocities that far exceed the natural expansion rate of the cosmos. Our own Milky Way, along with the Andromeda Galaxy and the entire local group, is being hauled through the vacuum at roughly 600 kilometers per second relative to the cosmic microwave background radiation. We are falling through a hole in the universe, systematically reaped from our isolation by the invisible scaffolding of titanic structures sitting right on the absolute horizon of our emptiness. But the existential terror of the KBC void goes far deeper than the physical motion of our galaxy. This immense emptiness has actively corrupted humanity's measurements of the most critical constant in all of physics, the Hubble constant, which dictates the fundamental expansion speed of the universe itself. For over a decade, the international scientific community has been locked in a bitter, completely unresolved crisis known as the Hubble tension. When astrophysicists utilize instruments to measure the expansion of the universe based on primordial data from the dawn of time, specifically the fading 13-billion-year-old glow of the cosmic microwave background, they arrive at a highly precise expansion rate of roughly 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec. But when astronomers point cutting-edge tools like the Hubble Space Telescope and the James Webb Space Telescope at nearby stars and local Type 1a supernovae, they consistently detect a significantly faster expansion rate of roughly 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec. For years, researchers desperately hoped this massive discrepancy was merely a calibration error or a mechanical flaw in our instruments. But with the unprecedented precision of the James Webb Space Telescope officially ruling out human and mechanical error, the contradiction remains completely unyielding. The universe is expanding at two entirely different speeds, depending on exactly where you look. This is where the structural anomaly of the KBC void provides a solution that is as elegant as it is deeply disturbing. Because humanity is looking out from the dead center of an immense, empty bubble, the local expansion rate looks artificially accelerated to our senses. The distinct lack of local mass inside our 2 billion light-year desert means there is less gravitational resistance to put the brakes on space-time expansion within our immediate neighborhood. We are trying to calculate the metrics of an entire planet while sitting inside a uniquely isolated low-pressure atmospheric anomaly. If our placement inside this void is the true cause of the Hubble tension, the implications for the future of cosmology are absolutely catastrophic. It means that every single localized measurement we have ever recorded cannot be used to calculate the true age, the actual size, or the ultimate fate of the macrocosmos. Our data is fundamentally biased, trapped behind a distorted cosmic lens that standard physics claims shouldn't even exist. We are left with the chilling realization that gravity may behave in ways we have never modeled, or that dark energy is not a uniform cosmological constant, but rather a volatile, dynamic fluid that clumps unevenly across reality, blowing gargantuan, uninhabitable bubbles in the fabric of space-time and casting our entire reality into an absolute state of cosmological isolation. When we push our instruments past the boundaries of our local 2 billion light-year void and peer backward through the cascading layers of deep cosmic time, the structural crisis of our universe transitions from a localized measurement anomaly into an absolute existential breakdown of the creation timeline itself. For decades, the standard narrative of how our cosmos evolved was etched into the bedrock of modern astrophysics as an unshakable linear progression. We believed with absolute certainty that after the blinding flash of the Big Bang, the universe plunged into a cold, featureless era known as the Cosmic Dark Ages, a multi-hundred-million-year expanse of time where absolutely nothing existed except for a thin, completely unorganized mist of primordial hydrogen and helium gas. According to every advanced computer simulation ever run on Earth, this gas was supposed to have clumped together with agonizing slowness, drawn into microscopic pockets by the faint, gentle tug of dark matter scaffolding. It was supposed to take billions of years of methodical, step-by-step gravitational mergers for the very first primitive baby galaxies to assemble themselves from the dark. But in the summer of 2022, humanity launched its most ambitious engineering marvel into the frozen wasteland of the second Lagrange point, 1 million miles from Earth, the James Webb Space Telescope. Armed with an array of massive gold-coated beryllium mirrors stretching over 21 feet across, and shielded by a tennis court-sized sunscreen cooled to near absolute zero, this machine was specifically designed to detect the faintest, most heavily red-shifted infrared heat signatures vibrating on the absolute edge of the observable horizon. Astronomers expected Webb to find the fragile, chaotic, scattered embers of the first newborn star, clusters struggling to ignite in the primordial fog. Instead, the very first deep-field images beamed back to Earth delivered a tectonic shockwave that fundamentally broke the entire mathematical foundation of cosmic history. When researchers pointed Webb's ultra-sensitive infrared eyes at a tiny, seemingly empty, pitch-black patch of the sky near the handle of the Big Dipper, a region that could be completely covered by a single grain of sand held at arm's length, they expected to find absolute nothingness, punctuated by a few dim, ancestral gas clouds. Instead, as the data crystallized on their monitors, they discovered 6 massive, fully matured, intensely bright star systems floating in a region of space-time that dated back to a mere 500 to 700 million years after the birth of the universe. To truly comprehend why this discovery sent a collective shudder through the international scientific community, you have to understand the sheer material scale of these prehistoric titans. These 6 anomalous systems did not look like the small, irregular, fragmented collections of baby stars that the laws of physics demanded. They were massive, fully realized spiral and elliptical galaxies containing nearly as many stars as our own modern, fully evolved Milky Way galaxy. They were packed with billions of ancient, highly evolved stars, radiating energy with an intensity that defied every known thermodynamic model of the early universe. The team of astrophysicists analyzing the deep field data at the time were so utterly stunned by the mathematical impossibility of what they were seeing that they formally nicknamed these objects the universe breakers. They recognized immediately that these structures completely shattered the established cosmological timeline, presenting a physical reality that should be completely empty but was instead populated by fully formed cosmic empires. The profound crisis of the universe breakers lies in the fundamental physics of star formation, a process that is naturally governed by strict, unyielding thermodynamic limitations. For a star to be born, a massive cloud of interstellar hydrogen gas must first undergo an incredibly slow, deliberate process of gravitational collapse known as the gene's instability. As gravity pulls the gas molecules closer together, the cloud naturally heats up, creating an outward thermal pressure that pushes back against the collapse. For gravity to win the battle and compress the gas tightly enough to ignite the first sparks of nuclear fusion, the cloud must find a way to radiate its internal heat away into the surrounding void. In the modern universe, this cooling process is heavily assisted by heavy elements like carbon, oxygen, and iron, which act as cosmic refrigerants, efficiently bleeding off the heat and allowing stars to form relatively quickly. But in the ultra-early universe, those heavy elements did not exist. They had not yet been forged in the cores of stars. The primitive gas consisted purely of hydrogen and helium, which are notoriously terrible at cooling down. Under these pristine and primitive conditions, mathematical physics dictates that building a star system should be an incredibly prolonged, inefficient process, requiring vast expanses of deep time. Yet, these 6 impossible galaxies somehow bypassed these thermal speed limits completely. To reach their recorded masses within the narrow window of time allowed by the early universe, these prehistoric monsters would have needed to convert raw gas into stars at a furious, breakneck pace of hundreds of new suns every single year, maintaining that hyper-accelerated production rate for centuries without a single moment of deceleration. By comparison, our modern, highly evolved Milky Way galaxy manages to forge only about 1 to 2 new stars annually. These ancient systems were industrial star factories operating at a capacity that modern physical chemistry cannot explain, leaving scientists to wonder if an entirely different set of physical laws governed the dawn of time. This structural nightmare deepens to a catastrophic degree when you analyze the sheer distribution of matter available in the early cosmos, a limitation known to physicists as the baryon mass fraction constraint. According to precise measurements of the cosmic microwave background radiation, we know exactly how much normal, regular matter, known as baryonic matter, existed in the universe immediately after the Big Bang. When you calculate the total volume of space occupied by these 6 universe-breaking galaxies and compare it to the total amount of baryonic matter that was physically present in that region during that specific epoch, the math completely collapses. These 6 galaxies were so immensely dense and heavy that they would have required virtually 100% of all the normal matter in their respective cosmic neighborhoods to be instantly, perfectly, and with absolute efficiency converted into stars. Not a single atom of gas could be left over to form the intergalactic medium. Not a single particle could be blown away by radiation pressure. Not a single gram of matter could be swallowed by central black holes. Every single shred of available substance had to be perfectly harvested and woven into stellar structures instantaneously. In the real world, star formation is a messy, highly inefficient process that usually converts only about 10% of available gas into stars, with the rest being blasted away by violent stellar winds. The existence of the universe breakers implies that the early cosmos possessed an unknown, hyper-efficient mechanism of gravitational collapse that operated with near-perfect structural perfection, a concept that completely overthrows our understanding of dark matter behavior. Under the standard cosmological model, regular matter is merely a passive passenger riding inside the massive, invisible gravitational wells created by dark matter halos. It is the dark matter that must clump together first, creating the deep gravitational valleys into which regular hydrogen gas can fall and eventually condense into galaxies. But for dark matter to build halos large enough to anchor galaxies the size of the universe breakers, within just 600 million years, the invisible skeleton of our universe would have needed to grow, cluster, and expand at a velocity that completely violates the mathematical boundaries of gravitational growth equations. The invisible framework that shapes our cosmos appears to be far more aggressive, volatile, and profoundly unpredictable than anyone ever realized. We pointed our most advanced instruments into the primordial dawn, expecting to witness the slow, fragile childhood of creation. And instead, we found ourselves staring directly into the fully matured, hyper-dense monuments of a cosmic civilization that skipped its youth entirely. This realization forces us to confront an incredibly uncomfortable choice. Either our measurements of the age of the universe based on the Big Bang are fundamentally flawed, meaning the cosmos is significantly older than 13.8 billion years, or the fundamental constants of nature, the speed of light, the gravitational constant, and the strong nuclear force, have not remained static over time but were radically different during the violent opening chapters of reality. But as deeply unsettling as these 6 universe-breaking galaxies are to the established timeline of cosmic evolution, they were merely the opening act of a much deeper, more ancient anomaly lurking within the absolute center of the primordial dark. As the James Webb Space Telescope continued to push its golden mirrors to their absolute physical limits, scanning the deep, ancient vacuum for further signs of structural defiance, it began to identify a class of objects that didn't just break the timeline of galactic growth, they threatened to predate the very concept of stellar time itself. Hidden within the dense, glowing hearts of these impossible early star systems, and sometimes found wandering completely alone through the freezing, unmapped voids of the early cosmos, Webb began detecting distinct, highly localized points of intense, concentrated infrared radiation. When astrophysicists mapped the spectral data of these anomalous signatures, they realized they were looking at supermassive black holes that existed at a point on the timeline where the very first generation of stars was barely beginning to ignite. And among these primordial horrors, one specific entity emerged from the data that completely paralyzed the field of theoretical cosmology. A naked, wandering singularity designated by science as QSOON. What makes the existence of QSOON an absolute scientific impossibility is its total lack of a surrounding cosmic home, combined with its staggering material mass. In the modern universe, supermassive black holes are the undisputed monarchs of the cosmos, sitting comfortably at the absolute center of massive, spinning galaxies like the Milky Way or Andromeda. They act as gravitational anchors surrounded by billions of stars, vast nebulae, and complex orbital networks of dust and gas. According to the co-evolutionary model of astrophysics, a black hole and its host galaxy are supposed to grow up together in a slow, harmonious cosmic dance lasting billions of years. As the galaxy merges with other systems and accumulates gas, a small fraction of that matter trickles down into the central core, slowly feeding the black hole and allowing it to scale up in perfect proportion to the stellar population around it. But QSOON completely disregards this entire evolutionary narrative. It is an absolute cosmic outcast, a supermassive black hole containing the mass of more than 50 million suns, compressed into a region of space smaller than our own solar system, yet it possesses virtually no host galaxy around it. It is a massive, naked throat of pure gravity drifting through the primitive vacuum of space-time, unanchored by a surrounding disk of stars, existing a mere 600 million years after the dawn of existence. To understand the sheer magnitude of the physical paradox that Q soon presents, you have to trace the legal, structural pathways that gravity must follow to build a black hole under the laws of standard physics. In our contemporary understanding of the cosmos, you cannot simply create a black hole out of nothing. It requires a stellar ancestor. You must first wait for a massive cloud of gas to slowly condense and form a colossal star, a stellar titan that lives out its hyperviolent life over millions of years before consuming its nuclear fuel and collapsing under its own weight in a spectacular supernova explosion. This cataclysmic death leaves behind a stellar mass black hole, a small gravitational seed containing perhaps 10 to 20 times the mass of our Sun. For that tiny seed to scale up into a 50 million solar mass monster like Q soon, it must undergo a prolonged, continuous process of accretion, pulling in surrounding matter and merging with other black holes over countless generations. Even if that black hole fed continuously at the absolute theoretical limit of its capacity without stopping for a single second, the narrow window of 600 million years since the Big Bang is mathematically insufficient to allow a stellar seed to reach such terrifying proportions. The timeline simply does not have enough seconds in it. QSOON should not exist, yet its distinct infrared signature sits firmly within the data, forcing scientists to look directly into an alternative, deeply unsettling reality of cosmic creation. To explain the impossible presence of QSOON and the hundreds of similar little red dots that Webb is now uncovering throughout the deep, ancient fabric of space, theoretical physicists are being forced to abandon traditional stellar evolution models and venture into the realm of radical, unproven physics. The leading hypothesis to emerge from this crisis is the concept of direct collapse black holes, a theoretical pathway that completely bypasses the necessity of stars. Under this model, within the hyperdense, hyperviolent environment of the newborn universe, colossal, pristine clouds of hydrogen gas containing millions of times the mass of our Sun did not fracture into individual star clusters as they collapsed under gravity. Instead, due to intense fields of background ultraviolet radiation preventing the gas from cooling down normally, the entire multi-million solar mass cloud collapsed inward as a single monolithic structure, falling through its own gravitational center and crushing itself directly into a supermassive black hole in a single cataclysmic event. If this direct collapse scenario is correct, it means that the early universe was capable of birthing monsters of pure gravity before it ever managed to build the first true stars, turning the entire hierarchy of cosmic structure completely upside down. Black holes were not the children of stars. Stars were the trailing remnants that formed around pre-existing primordial maws of absolute darkness. This realization transforms our understanding of the macrocosmos from an orderly, slowly evolving cradle into a primordial minefield dominated by ancient, hungering voids that have been lurking in the total darkness since the very first seconds of reality. These little red dots identified by Webb are not peaceful cradles of early life. They are the howling, screaming engines of primordial catastrophes, radiating intense fields of high-energy X-rays and superheated plasma as they dismantle the pristine structures of the early universe. They prove that gravity possessed a dark, alternative pathway of creation that operated with brutal velocity, forging supermassive voids that began consuming the fabric of space-time before the concept of a galaxy was even defined. And as we continue to track the ripples of this primordial violence forward through time, we discover that this chaotic, rule-breaking energy did not remain confined to the edge of the universe. It flowed down through the cosmic web, forcing galaxies into catastrophic head-on train wrecks that generated entirely new, unstable forms of physics that humanity has never before witnessed in the local cosmos. The revelation that the early universe was governed by an entirely different, accelerated set of structural rules does not remain confined to the prehistoric boundary of the cosmos. Rather, it cascades forward through time, manifesting as hyper-violent kinetic catastrophes that continue to rewrite the laws of physics in the more mature epochs of space. As the chaotic, primordial energy of the newborn universe began to settle into the grand cosmic web, galaxies that had formed along the dense intersections of dark matter filaments were drawn toward one another by an inexorable, brutal gravitational pull. For decades, astronomers believed they understood the exact mechanics of what happens when two massive star systems collide. We thought we were looking at a slow, predictable process of tidal disruption, where galactic disks are torn apart into long, chaotic tidal tails of scattered stars, eventually settling into a featureless, blob-like elliptical galaxy over billions of years. But when researchers began digging through the archival infrared data captured by the James Webb Space Telescope's Cosmos Web Survey, a massive, large-scale initiative designed to map the structural layout of the mid-aged universe, they collided with an object that completely upended our understanding of galactic mergers. Located roughly 8 billion light-years away in the constellation Sextans, astronomers Peter van Dokkum and Gabriel Brammer identified a structural anomaly so geometrically bizarre and physically unprecedented that it was formally designated as the Infinity Galaxy. When you look at the raw infrared light captured by Webb's near-infrared camera, the Infinity Galaxy does not resemble any structural layout ever catalogued in the history of astronomy. It displays a flawless, highly unusual figure 8 shape that perfectly mirrors the mathematical symbol for infinity. This breathtaking architecture is the result of a spectacular head-on collision between two massive parallel disk galaxies that slammed into one another with near-perfect geometric alignment. As the two systems rammed through each other's structural centers, the intense gravitational shockwave did not tear the stars away into random, chaotic streams. Instead, the cataclysmic impact triggered the formation of massive, symmetric collisional rings of gas and stars that expanded outward from each individual galactic core, creating two perfectly balanced glowing loops that remain interlocked across 10 kiloparsecs of empty space. Within the centers of these two glowing rings sit the original, highly compact, ultra-dense nuclei of the pre-merger galaxies, glowing with a fierce, ancient yellow light. But the true, mind-bending shockwave of the Infinity Galaxy was not found in its unprecedented visual symmetry. It was uncovered when scientists overlaid the infrared imagery with high-resolution X-ray data from NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory and radio maps from the Carl G. Jansky Very Large Array. In every single galactic merger ever simulated by modern supercomputers, the supermassive black holes that reside at the centers of the colliding galaxies are supposed to stay locked within their respective domestic nuclei. As the galaxies merge, these central maws are predicted to slowly spiral inward toward one another over hundreds of millions of years, eventually settling into a tight binary dance at the new center of mass before merging into a single, larger singularity. But when astronomers analyze the high-energy emissions radiating from the Infinity Galaxy, they discovered a reality that completely broke this gravitational narrative. The system does indeed host active supermassive black holes within the compact cores of each colliding loop, but a third, highly active supermassive black hole containing roughly 1 million times the mass of our Sun was detected floating precisely in the middle of the empty space between the two nuclei. It is suspended directly within the collisional front, an environment dominated by a vast, howling swath of superheated, highly ionized hydrogen gas that was violently stripped away from both galaxies during the head-on impact. This positioning is a profound mathematical paradox. The black hole is sitting in a region of space that should be gravitationally unstable, completely detached from any supporting stellar infrastructure. Yet, its radial velocity matches the turbulent gas around it to within 50 kilometers per second. The presence of an active million solar mass black hole floating naked inside a bridge of wrecked intergalactic gas provides the international scientific community with the first historical, empirical smoking gun for a process that had previously existed only as a controversial mathematical theory. The direct collapse mechanism of black hole formation on a macroscopic scale. By studying the specific kinetic signatures of the infinity galaxy, Van Dokkum's team realized they were witnessing a galaxy-scale equivalent of a cosmic shock wave, similar to what occurs in the famous bullet cluster. As the two parallel disks smashed together, the immense reservoirs of gas trapped within them did not have time to slowly condense into individual star clusters. Instead, the gas clouds slammed into each other at supersonic speeds, creating an instantaneous, ultra-dense compression front. The turbulence and pressure within this localized gas bridge became so overwhelmingly absolute that the gas underwent a runaway, catastrophic gravitational collapse in situ. It bypassed the entire multi-million-year process of star formation, skipping the birth and death of stellar ancestors entirely, and crushed its own collective mass directly into a supermassive black hole in the immediate aftermath of the collision. This discovery proves that the universe does not always build its gravitational monsters through the slow accretion of starlight. Under the extreme conditions of a galactic train wreck, gravity can forge a supermassive void out of raw gas in a single cataclysmic instant, validating the exact mechanism that built the impossible titans of the early cosmos. This profound realization that the fundamental mechanics of cosmic creation are far more violent, efficient, and unpredictable than our standard models allow, does not stop at the scale of interacting galaxies. When we trace this rule-breaking energy down into the microscopic substructures of individual stellar nurseries, we find that the same chaotic physics are actively destroying our understanding of how star systems build individual planets. For generations, planetary science operated under the comforting assumption of the core accretion model, which dictates that planets are the orderly, domestic children of stars. We believed that as a young star ignites, it leaves behind a flat, rotating circumstellar disk of gas and dust from which planets slowly congeal over tens of millions of years, remaining bound to their parent star for eternity. But when the James Webb Space Telescope pointed its powerful infrared instruments at the churning, star-forming heart of the Orion Nebula, a dense celestial nursery located roughly 1,300 light-years from Earth, it pulled back the curtain on a phenomenon so bizarre that it has forced a complete overhaul of planetary evolutionary theory. Scattered throughout the glowing gas filaments of the nebula, completely disconnected from any parent star, Webb identified over 500 free-floating planetary mass objects drifting through the absolute darkness of the interstellar vacuum. These cosmic outcasts are roughly the size of Jupiter, but they completely lack the stellar anchor that defines a traditional planet. They are wandering through the eternal night of the nebula in total isolation, yet they are not traveling alone. In a discovery that left planetary scientists in a state of profound bewilderment, the data revealed that dozens of these rogue Jupiters are traveling in pairs, locked in a delicate, hyper-extended orbital embrace with one another. Astronomers have officially classified these paired wanderers as Jupiter mass binary objects, or jumbos. The sheer existence of these binary pairs completely shatters the two established pathways of planetary creation. Under the core accretion model, you can easily build a gas giant inside a stellar disk, but if that planet is subsequently ejected into deep space by the gravitational instability of its siblings, the violent kinetic energy required for the ejection would instantly rip any companion planet away, leaving it to wander alone. Conversely, if you try to explain the jumbos using the stellar fragmentation model, suggesting they formed like binary stars from the direct collapse of tiny gas pockets, the thermal physics of a nebula dictate that gravity cannot condense a cloud smaller than about 3 to 5 times the mass of Jupiter before the internal pressure halts the collapse. The jumbos sit in a mathematical dead zone. They are too small to be stars, yet their binary architecture proves they could not have been ejected from a traditional planetary system. The mystery of these free-floating twin worlds transitioned from a structural puzzle into an outright existential crisis when international research teams pointed high-powered radio observatories at the Orion Nebula to decode the electromagnetic signatures of the jumbos. They discovered that these cold, isolated gas giants are actively broadcasting intense, high-frequency gigahertz radio signals into the deep freeze of space. In the realm of planetary physics, a gas giant planet is only supposed to produce low-frequency radio emissions, which are generated when the charged particles of solar winds crash into the planet's magnetic field, creating powerful auroral displays similar to the northern lights on Earth. But the jumbos have no solar winds. They have no parent star to bombard them with radiation, and the radio signals they are producing are thousands of times higher in pitch than anything ever recorded from a normal planet. To generate gigahertz frequency radio bursts in the absolute isolation of interstellar space, these worlds must possess a hyperactive internal engine or a completely unique electromagnetic dynamo. Some physicists hypothesize that the intense gravitational friction caused by their tight, binary orbital dance is actively churning their liquid metallic hydrogen interiors, turning these rogue twins into massive, self-sustaining cosmic electrical generators that are screaming into the void, operating as a class of exotic planetary bodies that humanity has never before modeled. And even when planets manage to escape the tragedy of interstellar exile and remain bound to their parent stars, the chemical environments in which they are born are defying the basic rules of planetary chemistry, filling our galaxy with worlds that are fundamentally toxic to the history of life. When Webb targeted a massive, hyperactive star-forming region known as NGC 6357, located roughly 5,500 light-years away, it zeroed in on an extreme protoplanetary disk designated as XUE10. This young planetary nursery is sitting in one of the most hostile environments in the entire Milky Way, directly bombarded by the brutal, blistering ultraviolet radiation of nearby massive O-type stars. When Webb spectrographs pierced the dusty shroud of XUE10 to analyze the chemical composition of its inner disk, the exact region where rocky, Earth-like planets are supposed to develop, the data sent a shockwave through astrochemistry. Every standard model of planetary evolution assumes that water is one of the most abundant, fundamental molecules in a young system, acting as the essential catalyst for prebiotic chemistry. But inside the inner core of XUE10, water was completely undetectable. the intense ultraviolet radiation from the neighboring cosmic titans had completely destroyed the water molecules, desiccating the disk and leaving behind an environment that was absolutely saturated with carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Any rocky world that condenses within the waterless furnace of the XUE-10 system will undergo an evolutionary pathway that shares absolutely no analogue with our own solar system. Without water to lubricate the tectonic plates or moderate the early atmospheric chemistry, these developing worlds will become hyperdense, carbon-heavy engines of desolation. The high concentration of carbon molecules ensures that as the planets cool, their crusts and mantles will be forged out of massive layers of graphite and silicon carbide, potentially creating alien geologies where entire mountain ranges are composed of industrial abrasives and subterranean layers are compressed into thick sheets of diamond. The atmospheres of these worlds will be thick, suffocating blankets of pure carbon dioxide, trapped in a runaway greenhouse effect from the very first day of their existence, proving that the chemical architecture necessary for the emergence of life is not a universal guarantee, but rather a fragile, highly localized anomaly. The galaxy appears to be quietly filling itself with billions of dry, carbon-saturated tombs, born out of the violent radiation of extreme star-forming environments that rewrite the elemental recipes of creation. When we look at the worlds that have already fully matured under these extreme gravitational and chemical conditions, the data from our modern space telescopes reveals that planetary reality can transform into environments that resemble literal descriptions of ancient mythological hellscapes. Consider the infamous exoplanet 55 Cancri A, a hyperdense super-Earth located roughly 40 light-years away, orbiting a star so closely that its entire orbital period, its full calendar year, lasts a mere 18 Earth hours. Because of this extreme proximity, the planet is locked in a brutal gravitational vice known as tidal locking. One side of the world is permanently forced to face the blinding glare of its host star, while the other side is plunged into a state of eternal, freezing shadow. Under every established rule of solar radiation and atmospheric escape, a planet sitting this close to a raging stellar furnace should have had its atmosphere completely stripped away billions of years ago, reduced to a naked, airless ball of scorched rock by the relentless onslaught of stellar winds. Yet, when the James Webb Space Telescope conducted precise thermal emission measurements of the planet, it discovered that 55 Cancri E not only maintains a thick, substantial atmosphere, but that this atmosphere is actively composed of heavy volatile gases like carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. The existence of this persistent atmosphere means that 55 Cancri E is operating as a giant, self-distilling cosmic engine that is actively cooking itself from the inside out. The day side of the planet experiences temperatures exceeding 2400 degrees Celsius, a heat so absolute that the entire rocky crust has melted into a vast, undulating ocean of literal liquid lava. The intense heat causes the volatile elements trapped deep within the planet's interior to continuously boil out of the magma, vaporizing the silicon and iron directly into the sky. This vaporized rock is then carried by hypervelocity atmospheric winds across the twilight terminator onto the eternal night side of the world, where the temperatures drop precipitously. There, in the freezing dark, the rocky vapor undergoes an instantaneous phase transition, condensing out of the sky and raining back down onto the surface as molten metal, liquid stone, and crystalline silicate hailstones. The planet is caught in a permanent, terrifying cycle of self-cannibalization, where its own geology rises into the atmosphere as a gas and falls back to the surface as burning liquid fire, operating at the absolute thermodynamic boundary of what material physics allows. All of these discoveries, from the multi-light-year plasma hurricane of J0529-4351 to the raining stone of 55 Cancri E, point to an uncomfortable, undeniable truth about the nature of our universe. The cosmos is not a quiet, orderly clockwork mechanism that slowly and gently evolved over billions of years of peaceful rotation. It is an arena of pure chaos, born in the hyper-violent fire of direct collapse anomalies, shaped by massive structural rifts like the KBC void, and filled with billions of orphaned broadcasting worlds and desiccated planetary nurseries that completely disregard the rules of our science textbooks. We are living in a temporary, incredibly fragile cosmic oasis, protected by a stable sun and a calm local neighborhood. But as we push our golden mirrors deeper into the expanding darkness, we are forced to confront the reality that we are late arrivals to an ancient, dangerous theater of creation, where the very atoms that make up our bodies were once forged in the screaming maws of primordial gods that are still actively tearing reality apart at the absolute edge of the horizon. But these hellish worlds, waterless planetary factories, and impossible primordial galaxies are not merely distant abstractions locked away in the unreachable depths of the cosmic horizon. Sometimes the ancient, rule-breaking artifacts of this violent history come paying a direct visit to our own immediate celestial neighborhood, cutting through our solar system like silent, ghostly apparitions from a forgotten epoch of creation. Recently, our most advanced orbital observatories, working in tandem with the infrared eyes of the James Webb Space Telescope, detected a highly unusual hyperbolic intruder racing through the cold outer boundaries of our planetary system. Designated by science as the interstellar Comet 3I Atlas, this 7-mile-wide monolith of frozen gas, ancient silicate dust, and exotic crystalline ice is not bound to our sun by gravity. It is a wanderer from the deep interstellar void, traveling on an unbound trajectory that will bring it through our inner solar system before casting it back out into the perpetual darkness of the galaxy forever. But when astronomers utilized high-resolution spectroscopy to analyze the chemical composition and radioactive isotopic ratios locked within the comet's pristine interior, the data revealed a reality that sent a chill through the scientific community. The material that forms 3I Atlas is approximately 7 billion years old. To understand the sheer existential weight of that number, you must realize that our own sun, our Earth, and every single planet in our solar system formed roughly 4.5 billion years ago. This means that 3I Atlas is nearly 3 billion years older than everything we call home. It is a literal cosmic time capsule, forged in the circumstellar disk of an ancient alien star system that lived out its entire evolutionary life cycle, collapsed, and died long before the cloud of dust that created our sun had even begun to condense. The comet survived the cataclysmic, explosive death of its parent star, an ancient supernova that shattered its original home planets and cast this small fragment of ice out into the interstellar vacuum at over 130,000 miles per hour. For over 2 billion years, while the Earth was nothing more than a boiling ocean of molten rock, 3I Atlas was quietly drifting through the absolute zero freeze of the galactic void, acting as a pristine chemical blueprint from an entirely different era of the cosmos. The distinct isotopic signatures detected within its tail show a profound lack of heavy elements compared to modern comets, proving that it was born in a much cleaner, more primitive version of the galaxy, where the chemical recipes of matter were fundamentally distinct from our own. It is a silent, unyielding messenger that reminds us that we are incredibly late arrivals to a universe that was already ancient, complex, and littered with the debris of destroyed worlds before our first primitive ancestors ever looked up at the stars. And it is this realization of our own profound fragility that brings us face to face with the final, most terrifying chapter of the cosmic story that our modern telescopes are actively decoding from the dark. The existence of anomalies like 3I Atlas, the devouring maw of J05 29-4351, and the reality-shattering scale of the KBC void all point toward a definitive, inescapable conclusion. Our universe has a strict expiration date, and the very force that is currently tearing reality apart from the outside is accelerating toward its ultimate, cataclysmic conclusion. For decades, cosmologists debated whether the expansion of space-time would eventually slow down under the weight of its own gravity, leading to a cosmic collapse known as the Big Crunch. But the data gathered in the mid-2020s has officially obliterated that hope. Dark energy, the mysterious invisible pressure that makes up nearly 70% of the total energy density of the cosmos, is not a static, harmless constant. It is a dynamic, increasingly aggressive force that is actively winning the war against gravity, driving the expansion of the universe into an exponential runaway frenzy. As dark energy continues to stretch the fabric of space-time at an accelerating velocity, it is creating a physical phenomenon known as the cosmological event horizon. This is an invisible, mathematical boundary that is slowly closing in around our local supercluster of galaxies. Because the space between our neighborhood and the distant regions of the cosmos is expanding faster than the speed of light itself, the light radiating from distant galaxies is being permanently stretched into wavelengths so long that they become completely undetectable. One by one, the grand structures of the universe are slipping past this invisible point of no return. In the far future, the night sky of Earth will undergo a slow, terrifying transformation into an absolute, suffocating void. Any future civilizations that evolve on distant planets, trillions of years from now, will look out into the night sky with their most advanced telescopes and see absolutely nothing but total, unyielding blackness. The impossible universe-breaking galaxies found by Webb, the roaring quasars, and the intricate filaments of the cosmic web will be completely lost to them, pushed so far beyond the horizon of visibility that it will be physically impossible to prove they ever existed. They will live in a state of absolute cosmological isolation, convinced that their solitary galaxy is the entire sum of reality, completely unaware of the ancient, majestic history that preceded them. Eventually, this cosmic expansion will trickle down to the macrostructural foundations of individual galaxies. The gravitational bonds that hold together the Milky Way and Andromeda will fail, and the stars will begin to drift apart into the expanding void, isolated from one another by trillions of miles of stretching space. This will mark the beginning of the era known as the Big Freeze, the slow, agonizing thermodynamic death of the cosmos. With the reservoirs of primordial hydrogen gas completely exhausted and scattered across the infinite vacuum, the cosmic nurseries will fall permanently silent. No new stars will ever ignite. The brilliant blue titans will die first, exploding in final, unnoticeable supernovae, leaving behind only the dim, ancient, slow-burning red dwarf stars to provide the last fading embers of heat to a dying universe. And when those red dwarfs finally consume the last of their nuclear fuel, trillions of years from now, they too will blink out, leaving behind a cold, dark graveyard, populated exclusively by dead white dwarfs, frozen neutron stars, and the supermassive black holes that have spent eternity consuming the remnants of starlight. In the absolute end, even the matter itself will begin to dissolve. If the grand unified theories of modern physics are correct, the very protons that form the nucleus of every atom will undergo a slow process of radioactive decay, causing the solid structures of dead planets and cold stars to literally dissolve into a thin, ghostly mist of stray electrons and positrons floating through an infinite, freezing void. The only objects left to rule this dead reality will be the supermassive black holes, the gargantuan voids like J05, 29-4, 351 that began their lives at the dawn of time by breaking the laws of physics. But even these absolute monarchs of gravity cannot escape the unyielding laws of quantum thermodynamics. Over uncomputable expanses of deep time, across numbers of years that dwarf the total count of atoms in the visible universe, these black holes will slowly, microscopically leak energy back into the vacuum through the process of Hawking radiation. Atom by atom, mass unit by mass unit, they will slowly evaporate, ending their multi-trillion-year reigns with a final, silent flash of gamma-ray radiation that fades instantly into the absolute zero of space. The story that our modern space telescopes are sending back to Earth from 13 billion light-years away is a story of a universe that was born in a state of hyper-violent perfection, lived through an era of chaotic, rule-breaking complexity, and is currently racing toward a state of absolute, infinite emptiness. But there is a profound, breathtaking poetry hidden within this existential nightmare. The carbon that forms the intricate double helix of your DNA, the oxygen that actively pumps through your lungs with every breath you take, the iron that colors the blood rushing through your veins, and the silicon locked inside the microchips of the technology you are using to watch this video did not originate in a peaceful, static reality. Every single atom inside your body was forged inside the screaming, millions of degrees furnace of the very first massive stars. They were shattered by primordial black holes, compressed by the head-on train wrecks of impossible galaxies, and scattered across a violent, multi-billion light-year abyss by forces we are only just beginning to comprehend. You are not a passive observer sitting on a rock, looking out at a separate, alien cosmos. You are a literal, living piece of that primordial chaos that has evolved the capacity to look back at itself. We are the universe's latest, most complex and most fragile chapter, desperately reading the ancient text of our own creation written in the fading light of the deep dark, even as the emptiness continues to expand around us.